Hi, my name is Bob Wheeler, and welcome to the Berean Observer, where we search the scriptures daily to see whether or not these things are true. Today, we wanted to address a kind of a basic question, and that is why should anyone even bother with religion? You know, we live in an increasingly secularized society. Church attendance is falling, and most people are preoccupied with the here and now. Uh, in fact, I think America today shows the signs of being in an advanced state of decline. And what happens is that as a society becomes prosperous, it becomes very, very materialistic, very consumer oriented, and people wind up being preoccupied with their own individual well being and their own individual self. And so they're all consumed with making money and going on vacations and what they're going to eat and so on and so forth. And they never think about the afterlife or the bigger picture. And then, of course, we've got along with that, we have this thoroughly secularized educational system where God is left completely out of the picture. And so people think they're educated even though they don't know anything at all about God at all. But the problem is that as human beings, we're all faced with certain great existential questions of life. First of all, who are we? Or what are we as human beings? Are we just animals, or is there something that makes us different from being animals? And then you get the question is, does life have any meaning and purpose? What am I trying to accomplish in life and why? Does it make any difference? And then you get the problem of evil. We have, as human beings, unlike animals, we're kind of have like a sense of right and wrong. And we see other people doing things that, that just strike us as being terribly evil. But then that raises the question, is there a kind of an objective standard of morality somewhere? What ultimately makes anything right or wrong? Is it all right to cheat on your spouse or to, cheat on your customers at business or what? Then there's the reality of death. We all, of course, obviously have to face the fact that someday we're all going to wind up dying. And so you get into the question, okay, so why do we die? And more particularly, what happens to us after we die? Is that just the end of life? And we're just rot away in the grave? Now, of course, down through history, human beings have had to struggle with these things since the beginning of the dawn of history. And there have been a bunch of non-religious explanations, attempts to deal with these questions. And there are, for example, non-philosophical or non-Christian philosophical systems where there you actually have philosophers who will sit down and try to reason through everything and come up with a universal worldview. But the problem with those is that they almost inevitably fall short. Once you leave God out of the picture, then you have a hard time explaining all the different aspects of reality, that they basically wind up falling short. And then you get into secular psychology, where people, in real life wind up experiencing a lot of suffering and sorrow, depression, and so on. And secular psychology tries to deal with that. But the problem with secular psychology is that they wind up trying to do this in the absence of any kind of an overarching moral system. They don't want to recognize the fact of sin in human life. And so it's all about how do you make the person feel better. And in some cases, they wind up prescribing some kind of a medication to help them overcome their anxiety. And then just plain old ordinary people who don't bother with any of those things. They just simply, preoccupy themselves with money, sports, politics, sex, drugs, and alcohol to ease the pain and fill the void. But the problem with that is that there's chemical solutions to what are essentially a spiritual or a moral problem, and they don't solve the problem. You could go out and get drunk because you're depressed, but then the next morning when you get up, you're hungover, and the problem still exists. The alcohol didn't do anything at all to solve the problem or to make your life better. The bottom line is that God is the answer. We live in a rationally ordered universe that was created by an intelligent supreme being, and everything was meant to function in a certain way. As human beings, we were made in His image. We have the ability to think and reason. We have the ability to make decisions. We have the ability to communicate verbally, and and therefore we're different from animals. And we were created for a specific reason and purpose, namely that we should serve God, seek God, and to serve Him, to love Him with all our heart and all our soul and all our might, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. Morality and justice exist by divine decree. God is the supreme lawgiver and the supreme judge, and eventually each and every one of us will have to stand before God and give an account for what we did here in life. And then finally, there is the possibility, it opens up the possibility that there will be life after death. And we'll eventually get to that as we continue our study here. The bottom line is we cannot live a happy and fulfilled lives unless we live the way our Creator intended for us to do. It's a little bit like saying, sometimes people say, well, we don't need there's no proof of the existence of God, and we can just function the way we want to. But that's a little bit like a car mechanic saying that if he's doing a tune-up on a car, he doesn't have to pay any attention to what the engineer said about the spark plug gap. Well, the fact of the matter is, if you ignore what the engineer said, the way the car was designed, you're never going to get the car to run properly. You have to do things the way the Creator wanted it done to make things work out the way they're supposed to work. And eventually, of course, we'll all die and leave all of our physical wealth and pleasures behind. There's a kind of a neat bluegrass gospel song that's called Can't Take It With You. And it's got a line in the chorus that says, you'll never see a U-Haul pull behind a hearse. And that pretty much sums it up. You're devoting all of your life, this present life, on what you can gain materially, all your wealth and possessions and so on. But you can't take it with you. You're all going to leave it. Eventually, you're going to leave it all behind. And then what happens to you? Where are you then? And then ultimately, we'll all have to stand before our Creator and give an account for how we lived our lives here on earth. Which is why we need to think a little bit about God and what He intended for us when He created us. And we need to devote our attention to the subject of religion, which is what we're going to plan on doing here going forward. This material is coming, a lot of it, out of a book that I published a while back called The Case for Evangelical Christianity, and why biblical Christianity still makes sense in the 21st century. And we'll be going through that and maybe adding some material as we go on. The book is available on Amazon. I am not the Robert W. Wheeler, however, who wrote the books about Jim Thorpe. So, yeah, it turns out I'm not the only Robert W. Wheeler in the world. But check it out, and we hope that you'll stop by again next week, and we'll continue our study. Thank you. Bye.